I've gotten into this conversation a couple times online, and I would just like to say the American wage isn't really 60 to $70,000. You constantly hear the average American makes somewhere around 60 to $70,000 a year, and technically, depending on which measurement you use, you can find numbers in that range. But that's exactly the problem. Average median household income and median individual earnings are completely different numbers, and people regularly use them interchangeably. For example, the Census Bureau reported the median household income of $83,730 in 2024, but that doesn't mean the typical worker makes 83,000 a year. A household can have two working adults or sometimes even more, and once you figure that out using basic math on housing stock, when you look at individual earnings instead, the Census Bureau's 2024 American Community Survey puts the median earnings at around just 46,000 a year. Even the roughly 60,000 figure has to be understood correctly. The census reports the median earnings of about 61,000 for a full-time year-round worker in 2024, and that's a narrower group. It excludes many part-time workers and people who didn't work the entire year. The mean or mathematical average for those full-time workers was much higher, around 84,000, which is exactly where high earners start pulling the average upward. But when you look at the actual wage distribution, the gap becomes even clearer. The BLS found that in 2025, a full-time worker at the age of 25 or the over median weekly was earning about 1,268, or roughly $65,900 if you multiply that by 52 weeks. But the 25th percentile earned $865 a week, or about 45,000 annually, while the 75th percentile was around 1,954, or about 100,000 a year. In other words, the middle of America is surrounded by an enormous range, and saying Americans make 70,000 hides that reality. The bottom 80% is even harder to describe with just one number because there isn't an official statistic called the average 80% average wage. But the census income brackets show where people actually fall. Among roughly 123 full-time year-round workers, around 51% earned under $50,000, and about 67% earned under 65,000. So that really only gives you a range of 17% of Americans actually earning close to 60,000, not even though. And only about 25%, the top 25% bracket in America, is earning $100,000 or more. So a huge portion of American workers at that 60 to 70,000 income is not the normal experience people imagine, especially since 51% are already under 50,000 a year. Basically, you keep that in mind every time you're arguing with anyone on Facebook because in general, they're probably not even earning over 50,000. There's a good chance they're not even earning 65,000. And anyone claiming to make 100,000 a year is probably just bullshitting you. It's less than a fourth. And this is where the top of the distribution matters. I'm not saying 10% of people literally changes the median. That's mathematically impossible. But because the median is the middle person, what the top earners dramatically affect is the mean or the average. If enough people at the top earn hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, they can make the average income look far more prosperous than what most people actually experience. So if we're asking, what does the real American worker make? The honest answer is it depends on who we're counting. For all workers with earnings, the median was under 47,000 in 2024. And if they really are working full time all year around, and in general, they're actually making somewhere closer to the top 60% of Americans, then it truly is 61,000. But for 51% of Americans, it's somewhere under 47,000. And the problem is presenting themselves. is if they describe everyday America at the 60,000 range, when it really only describes about 1 in 4 people, if you're lucky. And so when you hear economics or these news reporters talking about wages, you need to start asking one question. Are we talking about households, individual workers, averages, or medians? And who has been left out in the calculation? Until we separate those numbers, Americans can keep sounding wealthier on paper than a large percentage, but in reality, less than 51% of us are earning over 47,000 a year. So just keep that in mind the next time you hear about how prosperous this nation is, because what we're earning is definitely much lower than what these news reporters are talking about, which is household income.